Okay, moving on to the next question. I'm going through a very hard time in my life, and I've heard that it's called a dark night of the soul. What is that exactly? Does it ever end? So, often the more sped up understanding, like the when your spiritual ascension process is about to really take off, that often happens in an understanding of dark night of the soul. And while I don't think we're going to get into it in this video, I can't remember what my next question is, so I don't think it's about leading into that. But the reason why the dark night of the soul often happens is because you are quantum leaping timelines, and it's a very thick topic, but I'm just going to say that when you quantum leap timelines, it essentially means that you're breaking down the environment that you're currently in around you. So everything's going to fall apart. Everything is going to be a big tower moment. You're going to feel like you're losing your friends. You're going to feel disconnected from your family, possibly the person you're in a relationship with. Maybe you'll lose your job. Maybe everything is going, you just, the life around you is just not it. Everything sucks. And that's because this version of your life is being released from you. Usually this version of your life is very ego-based. It's an egoic understanding. And dark night of the soul is when your soul is like, no more. I'm not going to allow the ego to lead anymore. I'm done. And so it begins to fight back and it begins to pummel and beat up the ego understanding. And guess what? The inner understanding of your ego is reflected out into your environment, and what is happening is your soul is trying to help the soul self reflect out into your environment. How does it do that? If it's beating up the egoic understanding within yourself, that egoic mindset within yourself, it's going to start to crumble the environment around you that is a reflection of your ego understanding so that it can replace it. So that is really what's going on in that dark night of the soul. Your mind is in two parts. You have the soul and you have the ego. And the ego has led for a long time, often probably since you were of a certain age. Usually once you become, about the age of, 12 or 13, when you start to really get away from, that certain spiritual understandings, as you become more of that adult mindset, you get away from leading in a soul understanding. And that ego starts to really hold root and lead you in many ways. And so, it can be earlier, but often it's around that time. And so what happens in this process is there's a battle going back and forth. Soul versus the ego, soul versus the ego, soul versus the ego. This is heavily, intensely in the dark night of the soul. Maybe your soul has been more of a whisper most of your life, and now it's done whispering because you weren't hearing it. So it's really about to it's really about to help you hear it. And this process can be very tough, but it's just really a part of you having a soul-led life that is more emotionally fulfilling. And also at the same time, there's a parts of you that may not have gotten the rest or rejuvenation it needed. And so the soul is really putting you in an understanding of the soul is basically really throwing a tantrum to make you finally pay attention to it and give yourself the rest, the rejuvenation you need, the time to yourself you need, because often this does put you into a hermit mode, and it's all about recollecting and re-navigating yourself. Oftentimes you cannot get up as who you once were. It's very hard to. And this dark night of the soul is to help set you up to be led truly on the truest path for yourself, that is about what your soul wants or what your soul knows is best for you, versus your ego fears, your ego anxieties, or anybody's outside understandings and opinions. That's what this is about, helping you to lead more strongly with your soul. But it is a rough process. It's called dark night of the soul, but it's also called ego death. And yeah, it really is. I hesitate. It's not ego death per se, because your ego it's not a bad thing, but it's been enlarged in such a way. And that's not, when people think ego, they think, oh, this person is so stuck up, or this person is so stubborn, or whatever. No, sometimes you lean into egoic understandings that people consider to be quote unquote good. Maybe you lean into an egoic understanding that says you should give everything away and never ask for anything back. That's not healthy. And that's very much an egoic imbalance. So that being said, whatever the way your ego has sat in you that needs to be balanced out, it will be. And this is more, even though a lot of people call it ego death, it's more ego deflation. It's not really ego death, because your ego gives you your personality and character for this lifetime. It's there, but it's more meant to be, it's a, I really, really like, I think I've said this like once or twice now, but I really, really like this perspective of it. It's the master and the apprentice. Your ego is this young understanding, and your soul is this ancient understanding that is the master of that. And it allows the apprentice, which is what the ego is because it is so young, it allows the apprentice to give, a little bit of suggestion. It takes a little bit of direction from, is willing to give a little bit of room to the ego. But at the same time, that doesn't mean the ego should be what's leading the understanding for you. The soul is the master. The soul is that ancient, always existing understanding. And so it should lead because it knows better how to lead, versus your ego, which has a lot more fear because it's so young. It's like a baby. And, you think of like a child trying to fix a problem, a child that breaks something, trying to figure out what to do. What do they do? Maybe they'll hide the thing that they broke, or maybe they'll put it back together wrong, or something else. The ego is a baby in that understanding. And so in some sense, this is about letting the thing that can truly lead the best lead, versus allowing what is too young to lead. So yes, it's more of an ego deflation, not a ego death, because your ego is a part of you and it's not a bad thing. It's just been given this job that's not necessarily the job it's meant to do entirely.